So for folks who prefer a capitalist approach on healthcare, one question you really had to ask yourself hard is, can healthcare really be treated as commodity? I'm gonna start a series called Life in Communism. It's my personal story. It's all true. No title bait, I promise. 10 episodes, 20 episodes, I don't know.
Glad to have you, amazing viewer. A brief intro. I came across this video on my For You page on TikTok and decided to bring it here because since the Red Knot discovery, I realized that so many Americans are now going down into history, wanting to know the politics, the daily life of Chinese, like they're digging deep, to know what is happening in China. So when I saw this creator who had spoken of her experience in life as a person, as a normal citizen living in a communist China, I decided to just bring this video here so that you can follow along and listen a few things that maybe we can learn a few things from her life experience. As you've heard, it's her life experience, and that's one thing that I love about TikTok. People are real without any filter from the media. She has explained things nice and raw, unfiltered. It's going to be a bit lengthy, but I would request you to stick around. We have a lot to learn here. Kindly like the video for a recommendation and then dive into
10 episodes, 20 episodes, I don't know. So let's go. I was born in the mid-80s in China. In 1979, the Chinese government, the ruling party, decided to change route, basically saying we need to allow private ownership, we need to accept and encourage private businesses. So that's what's so-called the China opening up, if you are familiar with the matter. So you may say, oh, well, you're born in the mid-80s. It's already after the opening up. Technically, you cannot call yourself a communist society anymore. It's true, but not totally, Private business doesn't just happen overnight, Well, for big coastal cities, investments could flow in just overnight. But I was born in a small town in the southwest of China. Things just didn't happen overnight for us. Okay, so what's life back there? First of all, the first structure I want you to understand is that the whole community was evolved around a production entity. Basically, it's a factory. For our case, it's a paper factory. Then around the paper factory, we have everything. We have a kindergarten, we have an elementary school, middle school, and high school, even a hospital and movie theaters. And it's only for people within that community. Okay, remember that thing? There's some foreshadowing I'm putting here. Remember that only for the local people, your people for your community. The community had everything, school from kindergarten all the way to high school, and a hospital and a movie theater. On top of that, we also had a basketball field, a club, which located on the top floor of the building where the movie theater was. So in total, I would say the community had thousands, if not 10,000 people. It's hard for me to give you an accurate number right now. Everybody lives within proximity. The houses are pretty much the same. There are some differences, but not to the level of difference in housing you see in today's China or in America. The pace were similar, not same, and there were some tiers, which I'm going to explain in the future episodes. Don't want to confuse you yet. Obviously, there were no income disparity like we see today in both China and America. CEO or head of the business making 100 times, if not 1,000 times more than the rank and file people. And pretty much everything was free. We didn't have to pay to go to school. If you go to hospital, they charge a tiny little bit of money. So literally everybody was able to see the doctors without worrying anything. And life back then, it was utopian to an extent, for sure. And also the paper factory produced really good, high quality papers. Back then my dad would brought home some paper cut into A4 size, and we stapled them together to make notebooks. Those are luxury treats. So today let's talk about entertainment and sports. First, let's talk about the movie theater. More of a auditorium / movie theater kind of venue, but totally legit. It could host hundreds, if not thousands of people. I forgot how many exactly. Big screen. The only thing I would complain is the seats were kind of hard to sit on. We would play a movie once a week or less frequent than that, because the problem back then in the late 80s and early 90s in China is we didn't have that many movie choices. Nonetheless, every time it is movie night, every kid gets released from their home. All those kids, old or young, just running around in the community. Nobody will worry about the kid would go missing or anything or any crime. It was just a blast. And the basketball field, it was a highly utilized venue as well. It's open field, no roof. We had this community-wide league. Each department has its own team competing in that league, including the team from the hospital and the schools. We as kids, all those matches were played at night, because during the daytime everyone has to go to work. So at the night, if it's the game season and the game night, we will all go there. And one picture I want to paint for you is that it was a small town. During night, it's pretty much dark. It wasn't New York. Nonetheless, during the game night, the big projection lights would just lit up the sky, just so bright and warm. We as kids, we would either celebrate our parents' team or just cheer for our school's team. Overall, it was really beautiful memory for me. We didn't have luxury. We didn't have diversity of choices, but it was just cozy. So the party didn't last, obviously. How it showed the community is going down was, I remember when I started the grade 1 at the elementary, we had 30 plus kids in that class. Then over the years, from grade 1 to grade 5, we keep losing kids, kids moving out of the community. I remember to the 5th grade, we had less than 15. So we lost half the population. Then that's when my parents moved me to another school. And that's when my personal nightmare started and all those freaking dramas started. By the time I finished the 5th grade, half of the population from my community moved away. Therefore, the size of my class reduced to half. So my parents decided to move me to another school, a school from the neighboring community, only 10 minutes away from my home. From previous episodes, I mentioned communist-style communities in China back then were based on factories. Ours are paper factory. They had a fertilizer factory. Exact same structure, but only everything is on a steroid level. They have a much bigger school, and they had a football field in addition to basketball fields. Olympic standard sized one, with tracks circling it. And they had a swimming pool. Again, Olympic sized one. And their movie theaters are much nicer and bigger than ours. And they even have a park in their community. And when I first joined the class, what those kids were wearing were so different from my clothes. It's literally like Macy's versus Walmart. And sometimes I got invited to some kids' home. Oh my gosh, their furniture and appliances are so much better and more diverse than my home. And I stayed there for 4 years. First thing is that we have to pay tuition, huge amounts. Previous episodes I mentioned that within your community, you don't have to pay anything, schools and hospitals. Now you're going out of your community, go to another community, you got to pay a lot. The amount were huge, so huge, my parents couldn't sleep at night. And one time we were late for the tuition, they put up this freaking board and hang it on the entrance of the school and wrote down the names of students owning the tuition, mostly a bunch of kids from my community. Every goddamn kid can see that, and the teacher can see that. Another thing is that the teacher just openly treats you with discrimination. They will just openly comment that, well, you're from that community, your grades wouldn't be that good, something like that. A very precise analogy would be, a black student going to a white school here in America decades ago. So it's a shit feeling, okay? It's like literally going from utopian to dystopian. That's the only way I can describe it. Do you know which is the bigger polluter? A paper factory or a fertilizer factory? I don't know. If you know, you let me know. But I know both of them are polluters. First of all, the paper factory from my community, I know I saw it. They released this brownish liquid straight into the river of the town. Really bad. But as bad as the fertilizer factory, they emit this, I believe it's nitrogen dioxide. Wow, it's pungent, foul smell that can make you literally vomit. However, the drama is, when I was attending schools for 4 years over there, most miserable years of my life, every time there's a discussion around pollution, we're always the paper factory. My community is always the scapegoat. It's always about the paper factory. Your community's factory is a big polluter. Exactly like the movie. Have you seen the Fear Street movie series? Exactly like that. Shadyside versus Sunnyvale. Shadyside gets blamed for everything, every bad thing that happened. Sometimes I feel it's just kind of crazy. Two different countries, so distant, but same dynamic could just happen the exact same way. Getting to the 80s, the Chinese government decided to allow private businesses to exist. So how it transitioned from a planned economy to a market economy, and also from every business, every factory is basically state-owned business to private ownerships. So basically the approach was, unless you're a huge enterprise or in a very important field such as oil production, you'll be on your own. And you can try to make it. If you make it, you make it. If no, boom, disappear. One successful transition story will be the Hire Group. They were just a fridge factory like our paper factory from my community. Through a bunch of reform, they were able to turn themselves into a private business. And they have been very successful domestically and internationally, even to this day. For a majority of those factories back then in China, they never exist as a true business. They didn't do marketing, sales, research. You can learn that overnight. So for my factory, ever since I was old enough to be able to understand things, it had always been a difficult situation financially. People moving away, the salary was very low and didn't increase for years, or sometimes they didn't even have enough money to pay the workers. So I believe it's in the mid-90s, my factory for the first time went through that privatization process, which sold to a private person. And that wasn't successful because as far as I know, that paper factory had been sold multiple times to different private owners. So what happened to the staff on the factory? To explain that, I need to add one more layer of complication. Just bear with me. So let's zoom out one more time. Across China back then, if your factory didn't make it, the worker there, 99% of the workers would just leave the city or find something else in that city to do. Sometimes only the head of the factory may be able to get another job at either a government agencies or a bigger state-owned enterprise. So my factory belonged to a specific government agency. I know it's confusing because back then in China, all those enterprises and factories were state-owned. Let me give you some example. Say, for example, America today, we're a communist country. All those businesses, large and small, are state-owned business. Okay, and on top of that, the Pentagon owns the Boeing company, or the Department of Justice owns the Target or something. So now says, hey, we're going to go through the privatization process. All those businesses, you have to make it on your own. Oh yeah, good. Okay, so which includes Boeing. Then half of the workers there at Boeing are considered government workers. So they have the right to say, hey, you move to another government department to work there. So something like that. So in my factory, half of the workers were considered government workers. They get to move to other government departments to work there, which took us a long time. I think up to this day, that entity still exists, but there's only 1 or 2 person staying there, maintaining whatever it needs to be done. But the other half of the workers, they started long ago working either at they privatize the factory or go somewhere else to find another job. Today I'm going to talk about mostly the community schools and the hospital. So first, the school, which is a simpler case. I believe just a few years after my parents moved me to the school from the neighboring community, which I hate very much, my community school got turned into a public school, which is about mid 90s. So it's the same as the here public school, meaning that everybody's can go to. It doesn't serve the folks from within the community only anymore. Now the hospital, which is much interesting or more emotional case for me. So surprisingly, it had been running until 2022 or 2023. Again, in my previous episodes, I mentioned there were 2 or 3 people left within that community to run or maintain the agency or the property there. The reason is because, again, I mentioned before, some of the workers within that community are considered government workers. That's because the community factory back then was not only considered a state-owned business, but also a government agency. I don't know why, but it's just how it was. One of the 3 people left there in that community was the head of the hospital. And the hospital obviously didn't have money to add new equipment. They probably didn't even have x-ray machine or anything. All the doctors or nurses moved away, but people still go there for minor issues, obviously. My grandma, when she was near the end of her life with Alzheimer's, she stayed there. A very simple word, but it just provided the place for us, for the whole family. So what happened in 2022-23 eventually ended is because the head of the hospital got cancer. Unfortunately passed away, so no other person could or wanted to run the place anymore, so it's closed permanently. And no doubt the hospital was the pillar of the community when it's thriving, and it still had been. Even when people started moving away, the community is going downhill. So imagine this, when any of us got sick, we would say, hey, go to Dr. Lee or Dr. Wang for this and that. It still warms me when I think about how I grew up. Whenever I have any kind of issue, I just go to the hospital. I'll be taken care of. Just like any of my peers or adults there within that community could get treated equally. And thinking about it, it's been running until 2022-23. It just makes me, I want to cry. Today, there's still a community there. There are still people living there, but it's no longer that kind of a communism style community anymore. And to give you a sense of what percentage of the population remained, I would say 20% of the original population of my community at its heyday. 20% remained. But I would say memory lives on. So the verdict, having lived through that last stage, the phasing out stage of communism in China, how do I feel about it? Truth to be told, I love it. Those years are the happiest time of my life. The sense of belonging, the sense of community was just so right and overwhelming. I wish you could understand, and I'm trying to get you to understand, but I don't think you could. But that's okay. You could go to, your local community hospital and school for free. Everything was taken care of. Yes, everybody was poor, and but you feel so equal. You don't feel left out by any means at all. Then obviously it did not work. Communism did not work. Don't think it's gonna work anytime soon. And if you watch my previous episodes, when I moved to the schools in the neighboring community, that's when shit hits fan. Everybody was richer in that community than every person in my community. So that's literally from utopian going to dystopian. I would never want to go through that again. Anyway, so the takeaway would be for folks here nowadays is that it's really important to find your community, the community that's really good for you. Find that, stick with that. Sometimes you get tired of people, that's okay, but just make sure you keep interacting with the community, and over time, mentally, it'll be very, very nurturing for you. So for folks who prefer a capitalist approach on healthcare, one question you really had to ask yourself hard is, can healthcare really be treated as commodity? If you're lucky, you get a really good PPO plan, you may have a little bit of freedom choosing your physician. After that, you're pretty much locked. You need a referral to a specialist, yes, and also you have to go with the provider within that plan. Do you have any pricing transparency on all the things you need, prescription, procedures, and surgery? No. I know it's scary. The government are going to take over. Many countries have that. I can give you an example of China. After, I would say, 2000, late 2000, before that it was like work in progress. When I was working in China in late 2000, I had a universal healthcare. Worked very simple. For hospitalization, the plan covers 90% of the expenses. For outpatients, we had like 1,000 RMB deductible. Miraculously, there were still private insurances there. My company bought me one of those. That be used to cover the deductible. So it should be working like that. Very simple.
That was it about this video. The creators page is linked in the description box for you to check her out. Kindly don't hesitate to reach out to her. Her page is public on TikTok. Check her out, follow her, support her, ask her questions. She might make more content. So many Chinese are not really on this TikTok where we are, and on Dreadnought. They don't speak about politics. They sell their products, they do stuff to do with beauty. So there's not much of politics there. Kindly go and ask her questions on that page. Thank you. Appreciate you. You can as well subscribe and support the channel. I appreciate you.